Beana, thank you so much for coming to the show. It is just, I'm so grateful to have you here. Can you tell us a little bit about who you are and the work that you do?
You bet. I'm grateful to be here. Thank you so much for inviting me. My name's Beana Bern. I am the founder of a little rustic retreat center in Northern Vermont called Rootstock Retreat. And I am doing a lot of different things here. Rootstock is my home, it's my church, it's my business, it's my family, my community, it's also my service. And so a lot of what happens here is humans coming to come back in touch with the planet Earth, to come back in touch with themselves, each other, how to human. And so that's delivered in a variety of different ways. My personal healing practice is rooted in mushroom medicine. So I hold medicine retreats here for individuals, small groups, and larger groups of 10. And then also do monthly ceremonies and rituals for women and men, moon and sun circles, equinox and solstice. A lot of elemental healing in the form of a rustic bathhouse. So basically a lot of wood-fired hot water, and forest bathing is also part of the mix. And then there's little dwellings and sort of off-grid space for people just to come and relax and heal. And so all those things kind of blend together depending on what somebody's looking for. And all of them are things I also need. So that's a very nutshell version of Rootstock.
That's amazing. I love the idea of the warmth and the water. So, how long have you found a type of retreat that you like to run over and over again that's a certain length, or do you do all sorts of different stuff, or does it change?
Yeah, I mean, the creative aspect of creating containers is really, I think, one of my that's part of my sort of gift and genius in the world, is to do that. And so I really welcome making all kinds of really interesting containers. In terms of the medicine work, I'm very grounded in that practice. I've been in service holding therapeutic psychedelic space now for just under 5 years. And for that, I have a very sort of grounded, clear format, and I don't do a lot of I don't do a lot of sort of innovating around that right now beyond just sort of honing. But outside of the medicine work, I'm very able to do all kinds of things. There's a vast array of gatherings and retreats that happen here that are sort of various lengths. And, there's a herbal pasta apprenticeship, which is happening over the course of 8 months here. There's geomancy and earth magic. There's all kinds of really interesting things where other practitioners come and bring their medicine. And so when I'm co-creating with somebody else, it's very joyful and flexible, and mostly just rooted in what's possible with time and space.
That is amazing. I'm just, rooted in what's possible with time and space. So just for the record, I don't know if we said, but you are in Vermont, right?
Yeah, beautiful Vermont.
That's amazing. So does the seasons, I know it gets really cold in winter, do the seasons really limit the type of retreats that you do, or?
No. The elemental healing is this concept, and I think there's a lot of different lenses and ways that people think about that. It doesn't matter what kind of offering is happening here. I personally am very grounded inside the medicine wheel and also the elements. And so that's sort of how I orient myself, no matter who I'm talking to or what's going on. And so when weather gets weathery, which it does here a lot, that's medicine, it's information, it's an invitation. So today it's, pretty cold, but bluebird sky, and every snow crystal is glimmering, and it's beautiful. And so I'm not deterred by weather. I mean, certainly because of the little sort of rustic nature of what I do here, the cold weather months, which where I live, it's almost, 7 or 8 months of the year is winter, reduces the number of people that I can gather with. So medicine retreats, for example, in the cold weather months are limited to 4 people journeying with 2 of us in service, myself and an apprentice.
That's so amazing. So yeah. I have to tell you, my husband's from Vermont and I was born in California. And we had a conversation a couple months ago where I didn't know snowflakes were real, like the pretty snowflakes. I really thought that that was just made up because the
Aw.
California snow that I saw in Lake Tahoe, it never got that cold. So it's just really funny. And it's just beautiful that you say that. There is something so spectacular about what the weather can offer. I really appreciate that.
Yeah, it's a miracle. And I think, it's, I mean, even in summertime here, like I've experienced 5 seasons in a day. And I think, coming back to just like the work at hand, which is like coming back into right relationship with how to be in the world, recognizing that, as without, so within, like the weather is just sort of a reflection of us. And so when it changes, or when it's hard and cold and contracted, or like really lush and open and juicy, like there's some part of that that's accessing some part of us. And so being able to sort of not be like in opposition to it, or protecting ourselves from it, but to really like invite ourselves deeper into it, I feel like is yeah, a gift,
Yeah.
many. Yeah.
So
Yeah.
you just said the work is how to be at right with the world. Is that what you said?
In right relationship.
In right relationship with the world. That is really gorgeous. I can't wait to dive more into your perspective about that.
Yeah.
I really like to kind of go back and make your story a little bit more human. Can you tell us a little bit about your own process in how you fell in love with this work and how you got to know yourself a little bit more? Where did that start?
A lot of failure. I mean, honestly, like the more that you sit with people in like the vulnerable space of medicine work, the more you realize that everybody is suffering just about the same. Like it's a very difficult thing to be alive in this world. And the things that motivate us to get brave, and the things that motivate us to grow, and the things that motivate us to expand or ascend or evolve are very rarely like tempting, beautiful things. It's most likely rejection and failure and sickness and fear, like getting pushed into the rock and the hard place more often than not is the lever that I experience people sort of really being willing to like move with. And in my case, I was like a very normal, I guess I've never really been totally normal, but I was a conventional person, high functioning executive in the luxury fashion industry, in the natural food sector, the dean of this or that at a couple colleges here in Vermont, high functioning person, ambitious, and married and divorced, lived all over the world. And I got a degree in economics and philosophy. Like I did all the things that you're supposed to do. I checked all the boxes and made the money and found, wore the ring and did the things. And like, no part of it was actually like deepening my relationship with myself. No part of it was like softening the edges of where my trauma, sort of, molded me. No part of it was actually like guiding me on how to live in this world. Like no part of it, and I was just like a good robot. And I made the most of that, and I had a great experience, and I was successful at all the things that I did. And it was a gift to be able to sort of like move through the world in that way. But around the age of 40, I'm 45 now, I'll be 46 in a couple months, about 5 years ago, and I guess I'll say this, in my younger life, as like a reckless, college student into my early 20s, I had no fear about anything. And so I did a vast amount of experimentation with all kinds of psychedelics, all kinds of materials, all kinds of ways of being. And then paused that, fortunately it didn't like suck me under like it did for many of my beloveds. But, many, many years later, I arrived to 40 and got out of the last of a long line of mean daddy relationships, and had this moment. I bought this house on this beautiful 10 acres, and I had this kind of moment of truth, which was, if I don't fucking figure out how to be well in my life and in my relationships and in this world, nobody is going to figure it out for me. Like I have to heal. I have to heal. And so that brought me on a very spiralic path, but a very clear one. And, there was obviously like a lot of sort of foundational stuff that happened prior to this, but like, the land here is very communicative. It's very intense. We were talking about the seasons and the elements. Like where I live is rugged and wild, and it's definitely like vortex energy. And so from the moment I moved here, there was like this really clear ask that I didn't understand. I like didn't speak rock, and I didn't speak tree, and I didn't know what was being asked of me. And so I ended up going into this shamanic apprenticeship, and inside that met, excavated a lot of things and kind of got in touch with snake medicine, which brought me into a very formative ayahuasca seminar in southern Brazil with some really important teachers, and just a deep and like essential experience for my becoming. And then snake medicine still kind of brought me into a Kundalini yoga teacher sort of training and a deep yoga practice. And all of that kind of in this like sort of tonifying way gave me the clarity, the skill set, the courage, and then the creative impulse to start to ask myself some good questions. So the questions were basically this: what heals me? What makes me feel generous? What makes me feel powerful? What stimulates my creativity? What makes me soften and open? What makes me want to share, and be like as big as I can be? And answering all of those questions was kind of how I reverse engineered Rootstock. And so that's the sort of winding journey here. And so slumber parties in the form of, women's retreats and all gender retreats, and plant medicine in a deeply held, reverent, careful, therapeutic way, and a lot of altar building and earth medicine and magic. Really good food, beautiful gardens filled with perennial medicinals that we like steep in oil and rub on ourselves, and good music and deep, deep, deep time, unplugged from what the world wants us to do, unplugged from who's following us or what we need to say to them, and just present. That was a lot.
Yeah, and I think I was thinking the answer to all those questions you just asked for me is to have the opportunity to get to have conversations like this one. It's just amazing and never ceases to amaze me, people's story. And what I loved most about what you said is that, pain for people is a lever. And you're saying that the more work that you've done, the more you realize everyone is going through the same suffering. That was really beautiful and honest. And I love that work. And you spoke about having a safe container, and there's so much there. That's everything. Having that opportunity to provide sacred space and it's like also this trippy process where we continually learn how to deepen our sacred space, within ourselves and within the world, within our home, within each other.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, it's a journey. There's so much, co-creation is hard. People are hard and complicated. And, to be able to sort of gather with intention, knowing, okay, we're going to do something together, and it's going to chafe in places, and it's going to create some heat and some friction, and we're going to have to navigate feelings. And how do we do that? I feel like that's so much of what's lost in our world right now. It's so binary and fractured and just divisive and difficult to be able to sort of hold the both and of, I feel this way, but I also can accept that you feel that way. And yeah, I'm good most of the time, except when I'm bad some of the time. And I'm grieving the world that I love and am watching die, and I'm exalted and delighted with the world that I'm helping bring to life. And like being able to sort of have space where humans that are not used to doing that are like gently guided to be able to feel those big feelings and let that energy sort of flow in a way that's productive, and creative. You know, it's very delightful. It's like my joy.
So when you went through your own process where you had said to yourself, I have got to heal, can you tell us a little bit about how that process looked for you? Because when I do these podcasts and I hear everybody's story, they are so unique, and our own challenges and our own self-talk and our own judgments, how we work with that is so unique, you know? So how did that look for you, for
Yeah.
starting your process?
Like not it like it wasn't pretty, I don't think. I mean, I'm not objective, so I don't know how it looked, but like how it felt was like, you know, to be like an intellectual being, right? And to like use intellect to solve a lot of problems and to have a command of like language to be able to compel and convince. It's easy to get tricked into your ego sort of believing that it knows what the fuck it's doing. And so, you know, for me to be like kind of like successful and smart and capable and able in so many ways in my life, I had this assumption that I should be able to point that intellect at my own healing journey and somehow crack that nut in the same way that I can like solve somebody else's problem with a, you know, strategic whatever. And I don't think it was clean like that. I think, you know, I had a when I left New York City and moved to Vermont, like silly girl, I was like, I am calling in patience and humility, right? Patience and humility. And like what a nice thing to call in.
I love that.
The actual like impact of like a 7-year stretch of like learning a little bit about patience and humility was like, it looked messy. Like it looked like I really fucked up selling a house and had this like terrible tenant situation and like drama in my love life and like intensity in my work life. And, you know, it was like this kind of thrashing energy of like, me kind of at war with myself, you know, and like already aware that like the victim frequency, like the victim mentality is like not useful. And so like all of this stuff is going down. I'm aware that I am the captain of the ship. I'm trying to be accountable. I'm trying to fix the actual like material 3D problems. It was very intense and very yeah, like it felt a little crazy to me, honestly, you know. And like all the while, like I'm like a functional person and I'm doing my job and I'm like kind to my friends and creating left and right, like calling in moon circles. And so it was like this like very it was like this very layered thing where, yeah, I was traveling in Beijing some years ago and I had this sensation when I was traveling. Have you been to Beijing before?
No, I wish.
I had this sensation when I was traveling there that it was that the city was falling apart as quickly as it was being built. So it's like in this like really like kind of like tense holding of like destruction and creation. And there was some element of that in me where I was like, the tension between what I was tearing apart in my life was sort of held by like what I was creating. And so, you know, I'm grateful that people love me and like me, and I'm grateful that I'm like useful in ways, you know. I mean, it was definitely like a really intense time. And for me, I think some of what I gave myself then and some of what I still give myself is just permission, permission to not know, permission to not know how to grieve, and permission to not know how to accept, you know. And just so I was learning that whole time just how to permit myself to be imperfect, to permit myself to be, there's a Kim Krantz quote, like, may I be tender with myself as I become myself. And so it was like a very like embodied version of that. And I don't think it would have it turned out as well for me as it did had I not been held by this like extraordinarily generous, beautiful, loving forest that I live inside of. This place where I live like held me in that. And I think that was also some of my path through it was just coming home to Mama Earth.
Wow.
Um, and not in like a Instagrammable way, but in a way where like it's how I live.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah, it really needs to be said. I like your comment about the Instagrammable way. And then there is a more deeper, authentic version of the work. But yeah, I just wanted to say that I really appreciate the way you express that duality of the both and, especially using Beijing as a beautiful metaphor. And what I want to know, because I'm also there learning how to stand on the edge of the unknown, and that's what I'm being okay with. And what's interesting about getting to that position is that it's still a new thing for me. I'm not, this isn't old hat. Like, I'm still like up at the unknown, and it feels like I'm learning to walk. And it's just trippy to it feels like what you're talking about as far as the deconstruction and recreation is it, that it continually goes that way, that there isn't like, okay, it happens this one time and then we just, we're good to go. We're constantly being aware of the way we're changing and letting go, and the courage it takes to face the unknown and to allow.
Totally. And I think inside the world of psychedelics, watching it kind of blossom and explode and maybe even implode a little bit, like whatever's happening, it's like this big energy, right? And there's all of these there's stories and there's claims about this thing solved that, I fixed this helped me do. And it, it's just so like my practice here, like there's many practitioners that are working in many ways, and everybody has to kind of find their way into what to do with this. For me, exactly what you just described, Tanya, like nowhere in nature is there a stasis. There is not one thing in nature that does not change. And if you really get to like the subatomic sort of level, everything is vibrating. And so there's this sine wave movement to every single thing that happens, including us. And when you recognize that, like, nowhere in nature is there a place called happy or a place called fine, that it's always part of this like movement, this wave, then it becomes obvious that like our work is not about being fine. Our work is about knowing when we're fine, knowing when we're not fine, and learning how to sort of surf that wave in a way. When I'm guiding people here with psilocybin, I'll say, we'll talk about resistance, like resistance to change, resistance to transformation, resistance to the medicine, resistance. And using that same sine wave example, think about this, like you're at the top, there's a beautiful vista, everything feels okay, and you start to feel the bottom dropping out. You start to feel the descent. You start to feel like the clouds are moving in and your energy is flagging and like shit's going off the rails. So digging in your feet and like clawing into the side and like trying to not go down, by the time you get to the bottom, you literally have no momentum to get back up. And so then you have to like climb back up. But learning how to trust that the moon is new and the moon is full and the tide is in and the tide is out and it's spring and then it's fall, when that descent starts to come, if you can just lean right into it, no resistance, welcome what's coming, there's momentum. And then the space spent like in the muck can get shorter, or the wave can be a little less steep, and it's more about learning how to just sort of surf the wave and like let yourself fall and then let yourself rise, and have that sensation be the sensation that we're sort of craving or striving for or wanting to put in a bottle like a firefly instead of the top or the bottom. You know what I mean?
Yeah, that's an amazing idea. I love it. Not to dig in and to go more with gaining your momentum from allowing. Like that's incredibly beautiful.
You arrive to the next peak much faster. You've squandered less energy. You've caused less pain and destruction for everyone around you. And it's going to happen whether you want it or not, because we're waveforms, you know?
And I love how you work with psilocybin in reflection of resistance. And I love that you also said there's many claims out there right now with the explosion of our second renaissance with psychedelics that it is a fix-all, but I really think that you landed on an important part, and it can't be said enough. Like, this opportunity to release our default mode network and to look inward is just a reminder to do the work. It's like just a space to allow ourselves to see, and then we have to carry forward with doing more of the work and releasing the practice of resistance and moving into trust. And it's just such a beautiful thing when we can do it. And then when we get to do it, we get to share it a little bit with our animals and our family and our friends. And is there anything more beautiful than that?
No, and I feel like, like that's the narrative that I'm hopeful, like, more and more people inside the psychedelic space are going to sort of claim, the colonizing human instinct to just eat more, get more, gimme, 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 gimme. Fix it, give me a pill, let me fix it. That has gotten us into this mess. And so, chemically speaking, you can't eat psilocybin every day and be affected by it.
Mm-hmm.
And so how do we, like, use the time with the medicine to, like, learn how to be in the world without it, and, like, how do we allow ourselves, like, the space to cultivate connecting energetically with the seasons, with the elements, with the red squirrel that's on my wood pile right now, like, how, like using the medicine to kind of sensitize ourselves, give ourselves new muscle memories of, like, what it feels like to receive earth medicine, what it feels like to be in coherence with nature, what it feels like to be able to sort of be that wave without trying to, like, control it. That's a lot of what my practice is kind of rooted in, is that angle. And it feels honest. Mm-hmm. And it feels achievable, it, like, for people, even, like, I work with all kinds of people. So I'm very, very, very open to folks that feel called to work with me. And, I was working with a veteran recently who did, like, many tours of duty. And, like, working with somebody like that versus, like, a yoga instructor, somebody who's here to kind of expand their sort of, their understanding of what now means. It's so interesting because they're radically different people. But when it comes down to that sort of, like, elemental truth of, like, how do you keep this fire burning? How do you bring the sensation that you have here home with you? It's kind of the same for everybody. It, like, comes back to the sun rises every morning and the sun sets every day. And there's, like, a perfect invitation to, like, bring ceremony back into your life in a way that's, like, literally authentic to you. So you don't need to, like, fire up all your crystals and, like, get all, like, dress right and, like, be woo. You can just use what is nature's already giving us in the form of the moon, in the form of the seasons, in the form of the tides, to kind of connect with that wave in a literal way. You know what I mean?
That's amazing. I'm just going to pause you because I got to get my heater because I'm freezing.
Oh,
no. Yeah, that was just absolutely incredible. I love that thought process. And I love that you also said that, we our now looks essentially the same, and that the morning sun and the setting sun is an invitation for our own ritual and ceremony. Like, that is just incredibly gorgeous. When I first started this work myself, what I thought the work is, because I continue to change it, especially when I get to meet wonderful individuals like yourself. What I thought the work is instead of that wave idea, I was thinking, okay, well, what you do is you see yourself and then you forgive yourself and you keep going. Because before I could get to a place where I could transcend the idea to living life as a wave, I had to really deal with this inner critic that was, like, incessant and crazy and difficult. And so it's like, you watch it, you see it, you forgive it, and keep going. And so that's what I was really working, teaching women. But I think that what happens is you get to a place to where you can even get beyond that and see it more in that sense of flow. It doesn't have to be like inner critic, forgive, move on,
No, it's a spiral. It's like a merry-go-round, and it's like, or that scene from like, European Vacation, like Parliament. Hey, look, kids, Parliament, Big Ben. That scene where they just go around and around that rotary? It's like, I don't know. I mean, there's so many wise people that have sort of found way, Rumi and, like Gandhi, and there's so many wise people that have been able to sort of articulate what it is, what it is, right? And it's like Ram Dass talking like we're all just walking each other home. We're all just sitting around a fire together. There's literally nothing to fucking do. There's literally like nothing to do except for like find whatever way you want to participate in this performance art that we are all sort of stuck inside of. That's a Terence McKenna quote. It's like if you like this idea, all the programming about like make the money and security with your 401k and productivity and virtue. Right now virtue is very big, right? Like, are you a good person? Do you have enough flags on your flagpole and enough signs in your yard to make sure that everybody knows that you're like woke and right and good? And it's like all of this is just like distracting us from whatever it is we're called to be doing, like
Oh, that's so interesting.
the deep, deep, deep service of like creation. Yeah.
I'm gonna have to see if that's like I because I haven't noticed that the virtue thing, but as far as socially and culturally, but I have noticed that virtue thing within myself,
Mm. I think the COVID pandemic has been like just a polarizing sort of moment of people sort of assigning virtue to their choices and then kind of like rooting into that. And so people that are feeling like the vaccination is a wonderful
Oh, I see.
beneficial way to give to the world are really clear about that. And people that are feeling like they're more kind of interested in body sovereignty and sort of not being I don't know, injected with something that they don't want to be injected with, that they're also sort of fighting for the good of the world. And both, but it's easy to kind of think that one is less virtuous than the other. And so that's kind of where like that's
Oh,
one
I
example of
see.
kind of
Very
what I mean.
interesting. Yeah, yeah, totally. Very
Yeah.
interesting.
Yeah, I think in the psychedelic space too, there's like, there's going to be deep opportunism, there's going to be charlatanism, there's going to be like really radically deep generous people, and then of course there's like the indigenous practitioners that have been doing this forever and like figuring out just finding our way. It's like it's a complicated matrix, and so like to realize that there's no right way for any one of us to move through it, to recognize that the doubt and the criticism and the fear and the feelings of connection are all just sort of pulling us to or from wherever it is we're supposed to be walking, but we're never going to really get there. And so how do you just enjoy the journey? The
So
metaphor of all metaphors.
I feel this incredible like bear energy from you. Like you're this like incredible ancient bear.
Well, Mama Bear is a very important part of medicine work here at Rootstock, and she's sleeping right now. But inside the context of medicine work here, when we're calling in the medicine of the West, inviting in the deep winter when she's sleeping, we'll invite her to sleepwalk with whoever's journeying here. And bear medicine is really about coming back into rhythm, knowing when to sleep and dream, knowing when to wake and hunt, knowing how to move with the seasons and move with the weather and move with time in a way that is like inherently natural, inherently guided by actual organic intelligence, as opposed to like, human constructs of work weeks and work days and all that garbage.
Mhm. Yeah, I really, I was when I was 17, I was going to go to school to become an Ayurvedic practitioner, but I got pregnant and ended up going the Western medicine model because it just made more sense. And I'm not anti-Western medicine, but I can see how the culture personally really left its mark on me because, as you said, in the executive world, there's really this idea of, okay, this is what's good and this is what's bad. And you have to be this way in order to be normal. And you can't, there was no room for this human sense of connection to nature and flow. There was, this is what a good patient's like. This is what a bad patient's like. This is what a good provider's like. This is what a bad, this is what you do. This is what you say. It was so controlled. So for me, like finally understanding that I could no longer live in those limitations and giving myself room to do it, it was such a hard process. So I have tremendous amount of compassion for the process that you did and the process that people are going through now, because it's really hard to leave those deep ingrained ideas of what perfect good, you know, is, and then choose to not know what's next and to choose how to live in the relationship with you in the world now, you know?
Yeah, that's another really beautiful gift of plant medicine, regardless of what plant ally you're working with, like welcoming the mystery, welcoming not knowing.
That is so beautiful, because sometimes I'm always like, okay, am I feeling spiritually connected enough? Like that question, like how spiritually connected am I? Like, do I feel connected to something higher? It's always like questioning, but you're saying, what if it's just welcoming that mystery? What if that spiritual connection is the mystery? Like, how beautiful is that? How romantic. That's so roomy.
Well, and I mean, and that's aerodynamic. I mean, I feel like, like so much of, depression and disease and stuckness and anxiety, these are like dense, heavy frequencies, and they like magnetize, they are drawn to each other and they get heavier. And, for me, I feel like, well, so like, coming here, right, for Inside a Medicine retreat, there's a lot of medicine, right? There's mushroom medicine, there's music medicine, there's elemental healing, there's presence medicine, right? There's all kinds of medicine. As soon as the 36-hour arc culminates, the story is the medicine. How they relate to what happened here, how they recount that, how they're able to draw from it, how they're allowed, like how flexible they let themselves be. I always invite people to, like, when they start to kind of craft the narrative of what they did here, I invoke Rumi and like Hemingway and Paul Simon and Jackson Pollock. You don't need to be a fucking scientist. You don't need to be literal about what happened. Be as poetic as you can be. And the more permission that we give ourselves to tell the exact same truth, but from the top of the angle as opposed to the bottom of the wave, it becomes more aerodynamic. It becomes more generative. It becomes uplifting. It becomes positive. And that's not really like fake it till you make it. It's just like, it's energy doesn't lie, And so to be able to, welcome the mystery as your spiritual practice. Welcome the not knowing. Welcome the wondering. Welcome the wishing as like exactly where you are on the journey. To me, that's like beautiful. It's perfect. It's totally enough.
Wow, Beana. Well, I'm going to buy my ticket and I'll be there tomorrow.
I would love for you to come with me. Yeah.
Yeah, that's so helpful, and I know to many of my listeners that's going to be incredibly helpful. So I'm just so excited for that ease. And so you mentioned like you were calling in, patience and humility, and you're kind of laughing about how hysterical that is to do that. And it's like we think we have so much control, and it's just so interesting to be able to see where the real patience and humility comes from and what that really is.
Yeah, it's a bold thing, like at any point anywhere in time, especially like in the Piscean age, which we're like coming out of, to like self-certify yourself, right? Without like somebody telling me you're ready, you're initiated, it's time for you to move to this next phase. Like I gave that to myself, and it's something that I'm trying to support other people to give to themselves. Like we're out of the village now, and we don't have these initiations anymore. We don't have these rites of passage. And paying whatever $100,000 to some Ivy League school every year for 4 years to get a certificate, right, that says that something, I don't know. I've met a lot of very like well-educated people who don't know that much about how to be in this world. And so, to be in an age where we do need to kind of claim our readiness, to claim our place at whatever table we're at, or to make the table, it feels like that's what's going to change the world. Like people rising into their truth, not being afraid of whatever sort of learning, whatever sort of gathering, whatever sort of process they need to go through in order for they themselves to deeply know that they are ready for whatever it is, And so that process of me calling in patience and humility is hilarious. And the universe like doesn't ignore you, and it delivered in spades, like it delivered and delivered and delivered. And I didn't have the wisdom back then to like know what I was doing, but I am so grateful to like 10 years ago Beana for being cocky, for being heady, for being audacious, right? And being like, I'm gonna fucking do something, and like thank God I was that brazen and bold, because I don't think I would have actually like arrived to this moment in my life as grounded and clear as I am without that suffering, like I personally needed to encounter a lot of failure,
Mhm.
to be able to find my center.
Yeah, and I have to say, I feel the exact same way. Like, my nursing career for the last 15 years, it hasn't been wasted. But I recall and I remember being in the ICU and working with alcoholics. And, we would get them to detox with all our medical ways. And, it was just such a wild ride working with alcoholics. And I remember the culture there being, oh my God, he just needs to stop drinking. Like we had no understanding of like how to humanly hold space for someone working through that. And it was no answer. That was never an answer, what we did. And, I would watch people, particularly where I was, because I was in Lake Tahoe, and there's alcoholics everywhere, but where we have gambling, we tend to have a big amount of alcoholics. But it's just really interesting now to know, to get to see and to get to understand what's incredibly lacking, and then to move towards what's possible. And we may not ever know. We're in this work of the psychedelic medicine. It's not going to be a cure-all. We know that, but we're starting to open up new ways of understanding that are really beautiful and exciting. And it's just so neat to be able to walk towards it.
More and more medical practitioners, doctors, emergency room doctors, therapists, social workers, nurses are coming here, and it's such a gift to be able to hold space for other healers, regardless of sort of what arm of the world they're sort of healing in. And I think, the real revolution is going to come when the barriers of who's more entitled to hold the mantle of healer dissolves, and everybody is doing whatever they can do, and so more and more I'm getting referrals from psychiatrists and psychologists, and then I'm supporting integration work with them and their therapist. Like it's the brave people inside of the current medical paradigm are becoming like the deus ex machina. They're becoming the god and the machine. They're becoming the ones that are willing to risk sending somebody to an experimental sort of unknown mysterious thing, right, and then trusting that something good will come from it. And I think the more that people like you are doing this work and sharing and connecting with people, like that's like the mycelial magic. That's the network. That's the way.
Yeah, it's so beautiful. I love that you said that. Who's allowed to hold the mantle of healer, and when we get to a place where that dissolves. And what's interesting is, kind of being a nurse and an advocate in the space, there are groups popping up. But what the nurses do and the medical community do is they say, okay, we can learn about this and we got to do our own work, but don't talk about it, and it's like, I can't do that. That's not going to work for me. Like we got to move forward, and there's got to be a few of us that will stand up, share, and speak, and do it as knowledgeably as possible. But the more you know, the more you don't know, and the more open, and humble you have to become. And I thought I knew something, and now I know nothing, and it's all about collaboration, you know.
Totally, totally. But I mean, you're brave. You're doing a brave thing. You're like, to be able to sort of to be that translator, to be the bridge builder, to be a weaver, and to bring, to bring one paradigm into the other. That brackish water, um, is certainly inside a psilocybin journey. Like the takeoff and the landing are, I call that brackish water. Like that's like this liminal space. And it is so rich and so ripe. And it's like all the places where like edges meet or overlap or kind of bounce together. There's so much potential. There's so much energy that can come from that if people do it with, integrity and curiosity and humility. And so I feel hopeful. The world is fucked, but it's a polarity planet. And so it's equally unfucked, as bad as it is exactly as good as it is. If you look at the Tao, like there's always the exact same amount of black and white.
Yeah, I was in a book club the other day, and they were talking about the globe going through the dark night of the globe as we go through our own dark night of the soul. And to me, it really feels like, we had originally with the psychedelic movement, originally there was this huge culture movement into our own sovereignty and our own healing and our own deeper understanding and spirituality, and it's happening the same way, and the same thing will not happen. Like the culture is going to rise and the medical community won't be able to meet it, but somewhere maybe we can grow, and that's what I'm really hopeful for. Like we talk about the brackish waters, but we're talking about, it's just so interesting. I'm just not sure what's going to happen, but the more we can meet each other in the middle, that's just, it's worth doing, because maybe we can meet each other in the middle more than we did before, which is kind of an interesting hope when we're living in a culture that's so divisive.
Yeah, I think just, welcoming mystery and supporting, Rootstock Retreat. I write on all my emails, and it's on the website, like heal yourself, heal the world. And that's like a sweet, tidy thing to kind of like have as a tagline. Every fiber of my being trusts that that is the only way. One beating heart at a time, one open mind at a time, one being at a time. And so being in, like staying in service and having the conversations and meeting people as you're able, that's all there is to do. And so we carry on. Yeah.
Yeah, that was so beautiful. So where can people find you? What's your website?
My website is rootstockretreat.com, and everything is there. Like if I do like weekly Zooms on Tuesdays, so people that are interested to learn more about how the medicine retreats work can dip in there, or schedule a private consult. And I do coaching for people and have a neat apprenticeship, and there's all kinds of radical stuff that's happening here this summer. And so you can check it out on the website and hit me up there if you want to learn more or connect.
Oh, thank you so much.
Let me know when you're coming, Tanya.
Oh, I know. I'm definitely coming. Yeah, and I just want to say that it is interesting I just love having the podcast, and it is interesting being a nurse, because I'll interview people who are on those we're looking at these two different ways of like in the psychedelic community. There's the people that are sort of in support of the medical model, and there's people that are sort of in support of absolutely no medical legalization only. And it's I just really hope that anybody listening, that we can find a way to bridge that and to meet each other and to walk each other home, like you said, and to keep the fires burning that we learn, and to be okay with that continual learning. And I just loved this conversation so much. And I just loved how much you talked about Rumi, and that's my favorite, and the poetry of everything. So this is beautiful. Is there anything else that maybe we didn't get to touch on that you would love to share?
No, I mean, this conversation went very fast and it was just beautiful. And it's such a gift to get to talk about what I do here. I think, I'm in a really rural place. I'm like alone on this hill a lot of the time, and just doing the work. And so, it's a gift and blessing to be able to to have somebody curious about what I do, and to like kind of share it outside of just the people that I work with here. I'm just very grateful for you for taking time to talk to me. Thank you.